When I was a kid, I would idolize Mahatma Gandhi. I wanted to make the kind of humongous, massive, transformational difference in the world that he made. And then secretly, I was bummed because I thought all the good ones were taken. I mean, he had already freed India of colonization. Martin Luther King had already taken us through the civil rights movement. All the good ones were taken. So I was bummed. I'm like, what am I going to do? Well, it wasn't long before I realized the world is actually still pretty messed up in major ways. Just a bit, right? But in a kid's mind, who knew, right? So as I was pondering these sorts of matters as a young person, I thought, well, you need power. So I want us to look at power right now. When you think of accessing power, what are the different forms of power that you think of? Just call them out.
Positive and negative.
Positive, negative. What are, say that?
Voting.
Voting.
Yeah.
Money, financial, economic, political. What else?
Influence.
Influence through how?
Mentoring. Courage.
Courage. Okay, they're all speaking. Where did that one come from? All right, so these are important forms of power that people like Gandhi, people like Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa have accessed. Now here's the thing, all these forms of power are available. They're kind of like ripe fruit on the tree, but we're not all picking those ripe fruit to the same level and scale as some of these big social changers have. And even if we take that down a level or two, it doesn't have to be changing the whole world. It could even just be the neighbor who's trying to overcome an addiction that we want to help. It could be a family member who's battling cancer, or it could be that book you've been wanting to write and get published. So we can add to the list of forms of power things like empathy, compassion, and love. Pause. All of these forms, even those that I just added, are out there. But what is it that makes people who are making bigger differences access those forms of power, and some of us not, or not as much? So when I look at that, I see that there are a number of precursors for you to even go for those ripe fruit on the trees and access those forms of power. And one of those precursors I want to focus on, and that is not buying into the situation that you want to change. What do I mean by that? Well, come to my 9th grade experience with me. The bell rings, the doors fly open, there's a sea of white kids flowing into the hall, and kind of like a brown raft drifting around in that white sea of white kids is me. I'm a shy, geeky Indian girl. And one of those white kids is John. He's a scraggly-haired, scrawny kid. His mouth is this close to my ear. Go back to where you came from. Every day, a different slur. On the outside, I'm silent. Inside, I'm seething. I just wanted to belong, and I didn't know what to do. But more than that, I didn't know that I could do anything because I had bought into that situation. I was being bullied. That's what's happening. That's the situation. That's all that existed for me. When you buy into a situation, that situation has the power. There is no you that's outside of the situation. So if you want to have power, you need to be outside of that situation. So here's what happened. One day, I got the slur, and I grabbed John by the collar, and I slammed him up against the locker. I know. I do not know where that came from, and I am not proud of going from silence to violence. It happens. Yes, thank you for understanding. But I did access power. And that kid never messed with me again. Woohoo, yeah? And all the other kids started being nice to me. They'd sit with me at lunch and talk to me and invite me to social events. Can you believe it? As I unpack that situation, retrospectively, I see that in order for me to have accessed that power, even though in this case it was physical, something had shifted inside of me. Some part of me stopped buying into that situation. And when I stopped buying into that situation, I could see outside of that situation. I could see a higher possibility, a different situation, and I could bring that self in me, the me that is not that situation, to the scene and act in a manner to move that situation to one that I wanted. So this is what I want to focus on in our program, is to look at how do we actually stop buying into the situations, bring the power that's inside of us to those scenes so we can transform that situations, whether it's something as big as sex trafficking, or whether it's your neighbor battling an addiction, or whether it's that book you know you want to write and get published. So we're going to take a break, and I'm going to share some practices with you.